everybody, welcome back to the junk room for another knife review. Now if you recognise the name of the knife from the video title, you'll know that this is something a little bit special. So I thought before we get to the knife we ought to have a special beer. Now I could have got organised and got a French beer because it's a French knife, but I've only just thought of that. So what we've got is Greene King Heritage Vintage Fine Ale from their Chevalier series. Bottle conditioned, 6.5% by volume. Now I've poured this already because it's bottle conditioned and I didn't want to mess it up on camera. And it's just as well I did, because this has been stored at room temperature rather than in the fridge, and it was very lively indeed. When I popped the top there was a noticeable release of CO2, but we've got most of a pint. So what's so special about Greene King Heritage Vintage Fine Ale? It's a range of limited edition bottle conditioned ales influenced by our brewing heritage and historic recipes. Vintage Pale Ale rediscovers the Chevalier malt, whose story begins around 1820 in rural Suffolk. Following its near extinction in the 20th century, it was resurrected and paired with classic English hops to create this rich, complex and full-bodied vintage fine ale. So, is it any good? Well, we've got a lovely chestnutty colour. It's nice and bright. Didn't do too bad a job pouring it. There's a lot of head, as I said, and it's quite a tight head. Doesn't give anything away on the nose, it's just faintly beery. Oh, but that's a good beer. It is a nice traditional balance, very malty, forming most of the flavour, but a good strong hoppy bitterness. No fancy flavours, just good beer. One thing I will say, and it's going to involve a word that I don't like, but never mind, it's the word we need: mouthfeel. It's very creamy and smooth. And that balances nicely with the bitterness. It will be very easy to drink far too much of this beer. So that's Greene King Heritage from Bury St Edmunds. Now, on to the very special knife. We'll get into the tale of that when we move over to the desk. But it's worth watching this. There is a little tale of extremely good customer service from the company that made the knife. They are Fontenille Pataud, owned by a chap called Gilles Steinberg, and they left me very impressed indeed. So let's have a look at the knife. Okay, so this is how the knife comes. We've got the grip lock bag, bit of paperwork, certificate of guarantee, individually numbered, a business card for Fontenille Pataud, Gilles Steinberg, and a little card asking you to review them on TripAdvisor. And then the knife is, as you can see, it's in a slipcase in a further plastic bag, and it's labelled RWL34, which is the blade steel and one of my favourites. So here we have the slipcase with Fontenille Pataud stamped in. Now this brings us to a story of customer service before we get the knife out. When the knife arrived, it was waiting for me when I came home from work one day during that week, and I was a little bit disappointed. The slipcase itself is nice enough, it's a bit snug on this knife, but when I placed the order on the website, it said that for this particular model of this particular knife, it came with a leather belt sheath included, which seemed quite reasonable to me compared to the others because this one is particularly expensive. However, when the knife arrived, it arrived like this, not in a leather belt sheath. So at 7 o'clock in the evening, on a Thursday I think it was, I sent an email to Gilles Steinberg, who owns the company, and I said that I was very happy with my knife. It arrived safely and it's beautifully made, and I was very pleased with the knife, but I was a little bit disappointed because the website said it would come with a leather belt sheath and it hasn't. So that was 7 PM on a Thursday. By 18 minutes past 7 I had a reply from Gilles apologising for the mistake on the website, assuring me it would be corrected and advising that they would, of course, send a leather belt pouch. It was dispatched the following morning and arrived a couple of days after that. And here it is. As you can see, a very different proposition. Now, I think originally all of the Capuchadous did come with a belt pouch as standard, because on Stefan Schmalhaus's review of a few years ago, I'm sure he said that his Capuchadou came with a belt pouch. But currently, these are sold separately, and obviously not everybody who wants the knife will want a sheath. So it makes sense to lower the price of the knife and sell the sheath as a separate item. And these, I think, are €39. Very well made, thick leather. The strap over the top is a single piece forming the belt loop. We've got embossing on the leather showing Fontenille Pataud, Coutellerie Fine, and just under there is the maker, I believe, of the leatherwork, and made in France. Comes with a steel, very nice. I've not tried that yet. Now, I said that this, I was disappointed partly because it was a very expensive knife, and it seemed that to include the sheath would fit with the price bracket it's in. Normally this would have been well out of my range, but last year my mother and my auntie both died and both left me a little bit of money, so I decided to get something special that I wouldn't normally consider, and this is it. So, including the shipping from France to the UK, this cost more or less £730. By far the most expensive knife I've ever bought, and you shall see why. We've got a pocket knife with mammoth molar scales. We've got filework on the back, both on the liners, the side plates, and on the back spring, and the little decorative piece set in the shamrock at the end of the blade back spring is tiger's eye, a semi-precious stone used a lot for beads and signet rings. So the mammoth ivory is sat on black liners, and we've got 3 steel pins. We've got carved bolsters at the front. We've got a little bit of filework on the blade there. So, mammoth ivory. Mammoth molar, I beg your pardon. The teeth. Judging from the pictures I've seen, an uncut mammoth molar has a top surface something of that size, maybe a little bigger, and it's cut in horizontal stripes so that the grinding ridges on the teeth that run transverse are reflected in the structure there. So the way this would sit is that way on the tooth. The colours are absolutely gorgeous. The picture on the website's a lot paler than this one, but this does fit the description of the colouring exactly, going from pale shades of brown to a deeper brown. And in fact we've got flashes of creamy white, silvery grey, and even a few flashes here, for example, of a deep blood red. It's absolutely gorgeous. The fit and finish is, as you would imagine, spotless. Everything is smooth. Everything's fitted close and tight. So, slip joint springs into place with authority, a very firm spring, and also some good resistance to break the knife open again. The RWL34 is mirror polished, so it does collect fingerprints, but we have the logo Capuchadou on the blade, and on the ricasso the stamp Gilles. And you probably won't be able to see on here, but there are 3 tiny initials stamped in there, which I believe will be the initials of the person who built this knife for me. Built to order through the website. And as you can see there, the file work is also on the underside of the liners. So it's quite a big knife, certainly by UK standards. We've got a handle length of just over 4.5 inches, about 115mm. The blade tip to handle is just shy of 3 3/4. It's about 95mm, with a 3.5 inch or just about 90mm blade. I think this is 3mm RWL34. Tapers nicely to the front. So if we do our usual size comparison, just check we're in focus, with the Victorinox Spartan, as you can see we're in a completely different league there. Much bigger all round. It's quite a heavy knife, given that the scales are fossilised mammoth molar. We can probably consider that to basically be rock now. Let's get the scales out. So in grams, let's just check the focus, 150.5 grams, or in English, 5 1/3 ounces. So I think it's a bit big and a bit heavy for pocket carry in a slip, but when we put the knife into the sheath, actually I think I've been doing it that way, that's better. It does make a lovely package, and that would be very comfortable and practical to carry on your belt. So the last thing to test, as we usually do, although it's not always last, the edge. Did it come sharp? When you look at the blade, there's not much of a bevel to the naked eye, it's very fine, but with a full flat grind it should be a slicer. And yes, it came very sharp. The RWL34 blade steel is a 60 Rockwell, so it's quite hard. I've good edge retention. When it comes time to sharpen it, it's probably going to need a diamond stone to sharpen it, and then the steel would just take off any burr along the edge. So that is my little present to myself, with money left to me by my mother and my auntie, who both passed away last year. Le Capuchadou, a big, heavy, beautiful, extremely well made traditional French pocket knife. And I'll just show you the attention to detail. I just noticed on the back of the rivets and the press stud, the popper, they are covered so it doesn't scratch the knife. So there we have the Capuchadou from Fontenille Pataud, a company I recommend very highly. They treated me really well, and I think that was money well spent. We'll finish off with a slideshow as we usually do, so you can take a closer look. Thanks for watching.
Tu vivais là, seul sans compagne. T'avais plus ton chien, plus d'amis. Personne pour sabrer le champagne. Les jours de fête, drôle de vie. Tu avais bien quelques voisins, mais qui ne semblaient pas te connaître. Traverser le palier, c'est loin. Sans doute que le sol était traître. Et puis un vieux qui s'en soucie, sa vie n'intéresse plus personne. T'avais des enfants à ce qu'on dit, moi j'appellerais ça des charognes. J'en reviens pas d'avoir appris que personne ne soit venu te voir. Tu étais tombé dans l'oubli, comme si ton monde était à part.